What's up, tribe? How you guys doing? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I hope you like this video. This is the Real World Homecoming New Orleans episode. I think this is episode 6, but if it's not, I'll make sure it's the right one in the description box. So at this point, everybody's just getting on my nerves. By the end of this episode, I think everybody had their turn in the sun, maybe except for Tokyo, Melissa, and maybe Danny. So we're still continuing this conversation with Danny and Matt about his homosexuality, about Matt's struggle between his Christianity and his faith and his beliefs in homosexuality. And here's the reality of the situation. And I get it. To a certain extent, I get it. Matt, you like Danny. As a person, you like Danny. You do not like the fact that Danny is a homosexual. You cannot wrap your brain around and you cannot reconcile the fact that this person, this act, this sin that you have convinced yourself, that you have been taught, that you have been told is so horrible. You can't connect this really nice guy that you've had this really great experience with, that you've built this whatever type of friendship you have. You can't wrap your brain around it's this big bad wolf. And so you struggle with being honest with that, because at the end of the day, you have to, well, you don't have to really make a decision, because at the end of this, you can go back to your life, he can go back to his life, and y'all ain't been in touch in the last 20 years, so you may or may not build anything out of it after this. But what you can't bring yourself to say, because you know how it's going to play to other people and you know the kind of backlash you're going to get, what you can't bring yourself to just come right out and say is, yeah, no, I believe that homosexuality is a sin and you're damned to hell, because that's what I believe. That's what my faith tells me. And I'm better than you because I'm married with 20,000 kids. But that's really the reality of where you stand. I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but that is the way in which this has played itself out. And so Matt is telling Danny, listen, I don't really know what you want me to say. You know, I'm really struggling right now because I do, you know, again, I like you as a friend. I like you as a person. I don't like your sexuality. And I can't reconcile the two. And Danny tells him, see, here's what we're used to. We're used to people making us feel better about our feelings despite how that makes them feel. Danny's gay. Danny is a gay man in this America that has to deal with being a gay man in this America. Whatever comes along with that. And so what you want Danny to say to Matt is, well, it's okay. Because Matt apologizes and Danny said, I don't need your apology. Oh my gosh, that was, oh, what, wait, what? What do you mean? I don't want your, I don't want your apologies. Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, I don't need your apologies because like I said, I am not here to make you feel better. So I understood where Danny was coming from. At least that's my interpretation. I could be wrong, but that is my interpretation of where this whole thing with Danny was where Danny's mind was in it, because I'm not here to make you feel better. Like, you feel how you feel and it is what it is. Like, but don't expect me to say it's okay and it's cool, because it's not. And that's not how I feel and that's not where I am. So Danny goes to producers after this conversation, and now he feels like everybody's coming after him. Y'all gotta be some of the most self-centered people I've ever seen in my life, because, you know, Julie felt attacked and everybody was coming for her. Now, you know, Matt feels attacked, and by the end of this episode, Kelly, you on my nerves too, but we're gonna get to you. He goes to producers and he's like, you know, I feel like y'all are just attacking the Christian boy. And he talks about the drag show, and he talks about when they bought the tarot card reader, and now this whole conversation about homosexuality. How is that picking at you? It's not our fault that your faith goes against these things. So so you feel like they're attacking you, but what it is that you really want is you really want them to adjust what they plan to do, adjusted to your sensibilities. Because remember, this is a flashback. This is a let's go back to what we experienced, and all of these are things that y'all experienced the first time around. They're not reinventing the wheel. You're different, you're older, and you know how to use your words in a different way than you did 20 years ago. But the drag show, y'all did a drag show. The tarot card, they did, like, none of these experiences are new. I hate to be the one to tell you, Matt, but it's not about you, bruh. It's not about you. Oh my gosh. Like, I couldn't believe he did that. Like, so now he's talking about he might leave the house because it's just too much for him and it's just too uncomfortable for him and he can't handle it and yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. So, um, then they have the flashback of the whole computer situation. Y'all remember the colorful Macs and all of that, and Matt is talking about how he was a big, you know, computer person back then, and they flash back to a scene of him talking about his website, and now that's how he used to get girls. And once again, who makes it about them? Julie, because Julie said, "Well, I remember us being in the car and talking about your book and people signing in, and you were like, step off." And that just really triggered me. Y'all are the most triggered people I have ever seen in my life. No, Julie. What it boils down to is you went up into that house. You was trying to find you a romance, bromance, housemance, whatever, however you could. And when Matt wouldn't give you the time of day, you was trying to push up on Jamie. So then she says, "Well, I remember I was trying to get with you and you didn't want to get with me." And Matt was like, "Well, I really wasn't trying to hook up with anybody in the house." Keyword, in the house. In the house. So she talks about, "Well, I remember you going out with Melissa, and I remember you coming back. You had a crush on this black woman that she was with." I'm gonna go ahead and let that slide. Why you couldn't just say the woman, but okay, whatever. I ain't gonna be nitpicky. And the only reason why I would bring that up is because Julie's first 2 episodes, but I'm gonna let that one go. I'm gonna let that slide. But you were offended that he actually wanted to date the black woman. And he said, "Well, again, the operative word is in the house. Like, I wasn't interested in dating anyone that I was living with." And Julie was like, "Oh, because I just thought that was really interesting that Julie, this is what I don't understand. Why are you so caught up on who did or didn't want to hook up with you? Like, again, if this is about y'all reconnecting the friendship, you're married, you're happily married, 17 years, 3 kids and a foster kid. Why are we it was the whole Jamie thing last week. It's going to be the Jamie thing this week. Now it's the whole Matt thing. Girl, all y'all are married with churn. Why are you worried about it?" So then, of course, they had to throw in David when he brought home the mama and the daughter, and they had a whole situation going on. But that just seemed like they threw it in there. But whatever, I guess, David, you got to be reminded, honey. You got to be reminded. So now Kelly talks about how uncomfortable she feels because she doesn't understand why they have to keep going back and forth over who they used to hook up with, who they liked, who they didn't like. She was like, "Oh my gosh, that was 20 years ago. Like, why do we care? Like, I don't want to talk about who we hooked up with and who you did or didn't hook up with. Like, that's not a conversation I want to have." Now, I can understand dwelling on it, but I just didn't see why it was that big of a deal. Like, it's a part. Like, I could see if this shit happened in private. Like, literally, it happened on TV. The whole purpose of you being here is to have a homecoming, to review, to talk about, to explore. So I get having the conversation. We don't need to dwell on it like I feel like Julie does. But to have the conversation, I don't see what the big deal is. But, of course, Kelly feels some kind of way, and she's really missing her kids. And she talks about, her husband and her kids and how he's an actor, but he fully supports her in this situation. They live in British Columbia, Canada. I didn't realize they lived in Canada. I'm wondering if, like, Scott does a lot of work in Canada because, they do a lot of filming in Canada. They film a lot of TV shows up in Canada. So I'm wondering if maybe that's what that is, but neither here nor there. Then we found out Julie's husband is coming, right? And Julie wants her husband to meet Jamie, and I think y'all would be really cool. And she was like, he knows about Jamie. He knows the whole thing with Jamie, so I just think it would be really cool for them to meet up and because, he understands. And then Kelly was like, at the end of the day, like, we all have that one person that opened up, like, that knocked down that wall of sexuality, like, that taught us what we needed to that opened up that door, right? She said, I think that, I would have a problem if my husband was around that person and vice versa. And I'm just like, that's real interesting to me that you're here and y'all keep going back and forth over it, and just spending so much time together and all of these things. And it's just like, it's so weird to me. It's almost like, but everything Julie does is so in my mind. Everything I do is keep going back to that conversation in the hot tub she was having with her husband about creating these moments. And I feel like she's really pushing this Jamie agenda, because I really feel like she's trying to create some moments. And poor Jamie, you are getting caught up in the matrix, and you're going to get yourself in trouble, because I don't think Jamie thinks it's that big of a deal. But if I'm Jamie's wife, I'm already uncomfortable. If I'm Jamie's wife watching this episode, I don't even know what happens going further down the line. But watching this episode, I am uncomfortable. I'm just being honest about it. So Julie's husband comes, and they do the package talking about Julie and her Mormonism and her sexuality on the show, you know, like opening up her sexuality on the show and everything. And it was, I would have felt a little uncomfortable watching that. But that did lead to the bigger conversation about, is she still a Mormon? What happened with her road into Mormonism? And what we found out is that after the show, she said because so many people thought she would leave the church after the show, she almost doubled down. Like, she did get kicked out of Brigham Young. I remember reading about that. She got kicked out of Brigham Young, but she like doubled down on her Mormonism. And that's where she met her husband. She met her husband in the church institute thing. She said something that she called. She said, but you know, ultimately though, they did leave the church. And she said that it is a big deal, you know, like them talking about it on the show could have, you know, repercussions on the family. Could have repercussions on the family, because in Mormonism, like if a family member no longer is a Mormon, like you're supposed to like excommunicate yourself from them. Like I remember reading this, and if I'm wrong, correct me. But she said that she's even worried about how it could possibly trickle down to the family, right? And affect his family and her family that are still in the church. And it did become very emotional. And she just talked about the things that were part of the Mormon church that she didn't like, you know, the racism, the sexism, you know, and how those were things that she had to sort of reconcile, and why she chose to walk away. And honestly, I really feel like this is probably, and I could still be wrong, but I feel like that moment might have been the most authentic we've seen Julie, in just how she shared and opened up about that struggle and that decision to leave Mormonism, and her husband, and how that still affects them and their family even to this day. Now, I could be wrong, but I really feel like that's probably the most sincere moment. But anyway, and of course, everybody meets the husband, and, you know, him and Jamie sort of, you know, shake hands and all that good stuff. And Jamie said he don't feel no kind of way. Like, he doesn't feel weird. He doesn't feel, you know, like any kind of way about it or whatever. But watching it back, after you hear how she was talking about you in her confessionals and stuff, I don't know, Jamie. I don't know. And like I said, you opening yourself up to a situation, you know, that I don't know. So later on that night, Julie and her husband, again, I feel like they went out of their way to make everybody uncomfortable. Julie, you already know that they can hear everything that's going on in that hot tub, because they told you, they heard you on the phone that night, that you were creating moments. So you and your husband are in the hot tub making out, and then y'all create a whole tent pallet situation, and you proceed to try to have sex with him. Now, I think he ended up stopping you, but you had every intention of having sex with him out there. Now, Melissa said they were loud and they were making weird noises, so maybe they did have sex just after the camera shut down. I don't know, but I feel like that was a little disrespectful, because last I checked, didn't Julie have a room to herself? Like, y'all could have just as easily went up in your bedroom, closed the door, pushed the two beds together if y'all wanted to have a moment. Or, I mean, I guess she can't leave the house, but it was weird to me. It was weird. I don't know, because again, I just felt like, I don't know how respectful that was of your castmates in that moment. Her husband leaves, and he ends up calling the next day, and he's freaking out because he found a playlist, or their Spotify playlist, that Jamie is on, and it's called Roping. Well, you know, Jamie and Julie have been jumping rope together. So I guess it's a playlist that goes along with them jumping rope that they can share. And the songs and the lyrics were, I guess, in her husband's mind, seductive and sexual. And he actually wanted her to leave the house and come home. And she was like, I'm not leaving the house. I am not coming home. Here's where, once again, I feel like she went out of her way to create a moment. Because what she did was, her husband is calling her. He is literally blowing up her phone. And who is she with? Jamie. What is she doing? Getting drunk. What is she being? Loud. Her and Jamie are drunk and loud. And to the point where the other roommates were complaining about how loud they were. And her husband is literally calling and blowing her phone up. She even tells Jamie's like, is that your phone? She was like, yeah, that's Spence. You can answer it. Jamie was like, I'm not. Thank you, Jamie. I'm so glad you didn't fall into that rabbit hole. Why would Jamie call your husband? I mean, answer the phone when your husband called. You know your husband is already upset and feeling some kind of way about Jamie. He already feel like something going on, and he's been, he's gotten into his little insecure bag, which I understand, husband. I definitely understand you feeling some kind of way. Why would you invite that into it? Why would you bring that deeper into it? Anyway, that's what it is. That's where the episode ends. Y'all let me know. But at this, oh, I'm sorry. No, I missed the whole part. Kelly and Melissa and Danny, they went on a picnic, and Kelly is telling them how she's worried, she's nervous, and she's thinking about leaving because it's a voice in the back of her head, and she just feels some kind of way, and she doesn't feel comfortable. And Danny was talking about how him and Kelly are really like friends outside of this house, how they've traveled together, and they're really like friends outside of the house. And so he was like, I know her, and I know she hasn't been comfortable. And so she's like literally in tears talking about leaving. I'm confused. And maybe it's because I don't have children, and maybe it's because I'm not married, but I'm just confused. Like, I get it. There have been things that might make you feel uncomfortable, but I'm like, hell, y'all done had the hard conversation about homosexuality. Y'all done had the hard conversation about racism. Hell, y'all done even had the hard conversation about spirituality. Why you want to leave? Like, this experiment has to almost be over at this point. Like, y'all literally have to only have a few more days. Like, roll on through it. Matt talking about leaving, Kelly talking about leaving. I mean, Julie's husband want her to come home. Roll it through. At this point, just keep on coming. Get to the end of the road. Anyway, y'all let me know what y'all think, child. I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.